Hello and welcome back to this course of videos on Node.js. This video we're going to look at the how of Node.js, how it actually works, and we're going to look again at the V8 engine that we discussed in previous videos. The V8 engine drives the Google Chrome browser for processing JavaScript and also works on the server for Node.js, the same V8 engine. Now at the core of the V8 engine is something called the event loop. Now, the way the event loop works, to give you an analogy, is imagine a fast food counter. You've got a bunch of people queuing, all wanting to give their orders to a person in the middle on the counter who's taking the orders. Now, this person on the counter, they're not going to take the order, go into the back of the kitchen and make the food, come back, give it to person number one, then take the second person's order. They're going to take order number one, and then give that order to their team of cooks in the back and say, hey, when you're done, tell me. And then they can immediately move on to the second person in the queue. This is the way that the V8 engine works. So we have a bunch of events in the queue. Let's take for example, the browser first of all. So on the browser, a person could click a button and they could be asking JavaScript, I want to map my location on a map. Okay, now JavaScript isn't going to do that themselves. JavaScript is simply going to say, okay, I'm going to call something called an API, and I'm going to pass this off to my back kitchen, if you like. And then the people in the back kitchen are then going to go and find this person's location. And then JavaScript tells the backend, okay, when you're done, when you have that location, let me know. And let me know by adding the event, a new event to my queue to let me know, hey, I found this person's location. So JavaScript basically is looping around one event at a time. So what do you want? Okay, I want location. That's fine. Now, what do you want? And going through one at a time and passing these requests off. And like I said, on the browser, they're passed off to what's called JavaScript APIs, like geolocation. But on the server, it's exactly the same. So we're leveraging that great functionality that makes the browsers work so well and makes Google Chrome so fast. We're leveraging that for the server. So here, the event could be a request. It could be a request from the client to say, I want to do a database request. So again, JavaScript now on the server isn't going to go and do the database request itself. It's going to pass that off to a separate, what we call thread within the thread pool. Now on a separate thread then, the DB request is going to be done. Now when the DB request comes back with the information from the database, it will pass it back and add it back to the bottom of the event queue. And then, so JavaScript, as soon as it's taken the request, the database request, it's passed it off to this thread, moves on to the next one. Next request from the user is, request for perhaps a network request to the Twitter API. And again, JavaScript will just pass that off to a separate thread. So you can see it can get through the events very quickly. And what it means is, it can handle lots of concurrent requests, which means concurrent is a fancy word for saying lots of requests at the same time. Because all it's doing is passing it off to this thread pool to do the kind of heavy lifting, it can take many, many requests at once and get through them extremely quickly, passing them off. And then once they're done in this thread pool, it will then communicate back into the JavaScript queue to then take the next action. So this is why Node is extremely fast and is very useful using this browser, the V8 engine browser functionality, and using that same logic of the event loop on the server. Now you'll hear things such as asynchronous for Node. That's one of the buzzwords, asynchronous. Now asynchronous just means that the program can start on a new request before it's finished the previous one. So it's kind of doing things at the same time. And that's just because it's passing it off. So the first request comes in, it passes it off, it moves on to the second request before the first request is finished processing. That's asynchronous. You'll hear the other word for Node, event-driven. Again, event-driven, you can see this. The event queue is full of different events, such as, please get information from the database, please get information from Twitter API. The JavaScript VN engine is responding to these requests. Now, the final buzzword, if you want to call it that, is non-blocking. So again, non-blocking is, as I said, let's say the first request is a database request. It could take a very long time. In fact, the Twitter API is a better one, because we could be waiting for a long time to communicate all the way out to Twitter and get the information back. We don't want to be waiting and standing idle. JavaScript doesn't want to be standing idle while that is happening. So when you hear non-blocking, that's exactly what it means. JavaScript thread is not being blocked by waiting for this Twitter API. It's passing it off to the thread pool and then moving on to the next event. So that's the three buzzwords: event-driven, asynchronous, non-blocking I/O. I/O just input-output, means network requests, requests to the file system, database, that kind of thing. So one question you might ask is, so how does the thread pool communicate back to JavaScript? Like, how does it, how is JavaScript reminded of what it asked for? Because, minutes could have passed, hopefully not minutes, but a long time could have passed. So when it comes back to the event queue, okay, here's your data. How does JavaScript remember what it actually asked? Now, that's some functionality we'll talk about in other videos, but it's basically, there's things in JavaScript. Functions in computer programming are sets of instructions. What JavaScript has is something called higher order functions and first class functions. It basically means that functions, you can pass functions into functions. So you can have a function, the function says, hey, go and request some information from Twitter, and you can pass, attached to it, another function, and say to the original function, hey, when you get your data back from Twitter, please pass back this function that I'm giving you, that I'm attaching. And it's called a callback function. So what happens is, when this particular thread is finished completing and the Twitter information has come back, what it adds to the JavaScript event queue is not just the data that came back from Twitter, but the callback function that was initially attached by JavaScript to the initial request. And so that's how JavaScript is reminded of exactly what it asked for, because it passes in the callback function to the original request, and then once completed, added to the bottom of the event queue, it is that callback function that JavaScript passed with all that pertinent information in there. So we'll talk more about that in the future, but that is, along with the event loop, these things called higher order functions, first class functions, callback functions, and we'll also talk about closures as well. This functionality of JavaScript and the V8 engine, these things together is what makes it so successful for quick processing on the server. Okay, I look forward to seeing you next video.